Menace, yeah, it's called Menace. It's the title the project has right now, and as it will be developed in Unity, it will be a lot easier for us to port it to other platforms. With Battle Brothers, we essentially had the problem that the whole engine had to be reworked, and so it was a lot of work to port it. But with the new game in Unity, it will be a lot easier, and so we will have a lot more time and the possibility to create controller support for that. Sorry, guys, there was a little disconnect for me. Could you repeat maybe the last question?
Now, I guess now can you hear me? Calandro was asking if how are you finding the new expanded team?
Sorry, I didn't get that. How did we find?
How are you finding the new expanded team? I'm not sure if Calandro mean literally how are you finding the new people. I mean, how are you searching for new people to join your team, or how are you finding the experience of working with an expanded team? If you can expand the question, Calandro.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, we had been working with just 3 people for, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. So it has been a really big issue for us to hire people, especially because of the financial hit that you take as a company, and this really, really big commitment to actually hire people. You get like all the responsibilities, you get all the overhead as well, the organization. You have to do the financing, you have to make sure that everybody's happy. So it's a really big commitment. And once we started actually hiring new people, it was really easy. And we're also currently looking for even more people. So if you're a marketing guy, then just let me know and we can see where it goes. And it's actually really big fun, and it's amazing to see how much more you can do with more people. And I'm really happy that we at some point decided to jump over that hurdle and started recruiting and getting more people on the team, because then we can make just a much better game.
Yeah, guys. So if you have a resume you want to send over, you know where you can hit them. Next question was from Schaub, I think. If I'm skipping someone, please forgive me. If you could change one of the existing mechanics of Battle Brothers right now, what would you change? Is there anything in your game that you don't like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there would be if we spend less time on the actual development. But with all those years that we had so many different opportunities to change things up, and things that we didn't like, and we redid like the graphics, all the graphical assets. We redid at least, I think, once or twice for the whole game. So we were never shy to go back if we didn't like something, and then kick it out of the game or change it up. So right now there's nothing really big in the game. It's more of like subtleties that I personally think the game turned out a little bit too frustrating for many people, and which I can totally relate. And it's more about like to improve the game flow and stuff like that. But you cannot really put your finger on a single thing.
Sorry to interrupt. Someone's asking what's the general setting for the playthrough. I did talk about that, but I was muted. So I'll explain again. I'm using veteran difficulty, low economic difficulty, high starting funds to speed things up a little bit. There was a second part of Shav's question. On a scale of from 1 to 10 gameplay ways, how similar is your new game to Battle Brothers?
Um, I think it's in the core. It's something that we won't do like a first person shooter or like a platform adventure game or something. It's turn based strategy is what we are all about, and yeah, I think it's our DNA basically. What we feel we're good at, and also what's the most fun for us to create. So I'm really sure that people who like Battle Brothers will find the same things in Menace that they can enjoy. I think it's especially important for us to generate stories, but also to offer the players the possibility to express themselves in the game. Especially like in Battle Brothers, if you look at the company, we get save games. You look at the company, and the company of one person is completely different from another. And in Menace, you will have way more possibilities, I think, to create even more different expressions of yourself and to create a world where people who play the same game play it in a different way and have different things to show each other and to talk about. And that's one of the core things that we want to keep as well.
Okay, the next question was from Arcadi the Winter Enjoyer. What's the general setting for the new game? If you can talk about that, Jet.
Yeah, we can't talk about that yet. I think there's just a very little bit in the description of the German government funding that we got, but there will be a big announcement within the year where we officially announce the game, and then we can share a lot more information about it.
So it looks like what the rumors were saying so far about well, not the rumors, what the community gathered from the German government funding was correct, but more details to come. The next question, sorry, playing and reading the questions at the same time is harder than it looks. Well, not a question, but a comment. Taroel says that the game is perfectly frustrating. Easy games are a dime a dozen. I'm quoting, Battle Brothers throw you in by kicking you in the jewels. So there's that. Ledaster says, "What would you like to add to the game? What do you expect in the future of the game?" I'm guessing he means Battle Brothers.
Yeah, with Battle Royale, when we edit things, we always try to yeah to add something new. That's why it became increasingly difficult to add new weapons to the game because we basically have almost all kind of historical weapons that ever existed in the game, and then some. And at some point, you just leave the point of yeah, but I don't want to say realism, but the point of historical, somewhat plausible weapons that you could put in the game. And so we feel that we're reaching a point where to really expand Battle Brothers and expand the possibilities within the game with the characters, with the weapons, armors, and so on. We will probably be forced to move a little bit more into more fantasy realms, and we're not really sure if that's where we want to take the game. So yeah, we have to see. It's really tricky to add something that still fits the style and the setting of the game, and also bring something new to the table.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Sly Hand um, dives deeper into the topic of Menace. If you don't have an answer, it's okay. But where do you think the new game is right now in terms of development? Is there a timeline or any type of teasers we can expect at some point?
Yes. So right now the game is already playable, and we have a rather big
Ooh,
internal playtest that we are having in 2 weeks' time. So
ooh.
all the basic mechanics are already in place for the game, and this year will be mostly about creating content. So we did like a first prototyping, and then we wanted to get all the game mechanics in place for the different layers of the game. And once they are working and are somewhat balanced, we will start really going deep into the content production and creating more assets and everything. And that's what this year is about. And yeah, towards the end of the year or maybe even mid-year, I don't know yet, we'll probably do the announcement, and yeah, and then there will be a lot more information on it.
Okay, I'm freaking out. For the first time in the game, I got 3 stars in 3 different stats recreate,
Well,
and it's
that's
an
insane.
indented, and it's an indented. Why? Sorry. Moving on. When should we send our resume and covering letter about doing marketing? Says one. Actually, that's a
Well,
good question.
it's an
Where
indented.
should people send their resumes?
It's just contact@overhypestudios.com. You can put it in the. It's like our official contact address. That's all going to my desk.
Mhm. Fair enough. Moving on. Arcadi asks, favorite mod, if any?
That's a tricky one. There are a lot of really cool mods out there. I think personally, I really like the smaller quality of life mods, and for example, the one pausing when an enemy is popping up, stuff like that. It's up to personal preference. But I can totally get the mods that show more information on characters and or maybe some that help with trading. Yeah, so it's just the quality of life mods for different play styles. And yeah, I can totally get why people would get that.
Okay. Next question. Physics Cat, are there any plans for native Linux support for either Battle Brothers or Menace?
Right now, not. We did explore it at some point for a while, but yeah, it turned out that it was yeah quite a bit of effort for us, and we did some research, and the user base is unfortunately really small for that. But we
What's
see we
the,
see about
out of curiosity, what's the percentage of Linux players? It's like 100%, something like that?
100%. That's all of them. Uh,
I mean, one,
I don't know. I
sorry,
can't.
let's see, doing too many things at the same time. 1 out of 100.
Yeah, maybe that could well be.
1%,
Yeah.
something like
I
that.
think plus the main priority should definitely be localizations and translations,
Mhm.
because we're leaving behind like so many people. Right now we have a really big YouTuber in Germany who's playing the game and publishes a lot of episodes every week. And he's from Germany and does it in German. And so many people in his chat and in the comments say they would get the game if it was available in German. But yeah, there are very reasons why it's not. But for the next game for
Mhm.
Menace, we will hopefully even start with a couple of languages right out the bat.
Next question, very straightforward. Why did you move from 2D to 3D? And is it easier or harder to make a game in this way? Assuming, he says, Menace is in 3D.
Yeah, it's really funny. Because we did start work on Menace in 2D, and we had a prototype that was already playable, which was a 2D prototype of that game, and it had all those little spine animations. If you know that, Spine is a program
Mm.
that's really cool to animate 2D sprites and 2D images. And it turns out that 3D, 2D is very, very limited if you want to do anything that's above the style of Battle Brothers, where people that actually like have legs and move around and do more than just standing. And it gets very tricky very fast, and especially if you want to do a little bit more interesting things with the environment. And in the end, we decided to go with Unity, because it helps a lot with animations, with effects, particle effects, and everything. And we still try to keep the hand drawn look, because that's one of the main staples of Battle Brothers. I think is the artwork, and that you can see that it's drawn by hand. It creates a lot of atmosphere. And we do have a lot of hand-drawn stuff that Paul has been drawing up for Menace, and you will be able to see it in the game. I think it somehow keeps the like at least partially the visual aesthetics, and that's really important to keep your identity as a studio.
Mhm. Uh, Talking about new content for Battle Brothers, have you considered doing an Eastern expansion, developing a part of the Battle Brothers world that draws inspiration from the history of China or alternatively India or Southeast Asia?
I think if we were to make a new Battle Brothers expansions, it was a really cool move to do the southern expansion with the deserts and the jungles and to add like a whole new, how do you say, yeah, geographical area to the game. and also different culture, because then you can draw from new historical how do you say that? Yeah, weapons and armor and stuff like that, and also fantasy creatures, right? That you can bring into that. And
Hmm.
so I think to bring in some fresh stuff, that would definitely be a possibility. I'm not saying that we're doing it, but but if we were to do it, it would be definitely bring a lot of fresh ideas to it. We would definitely have to do something about the setting. But one thing that I personally am concerned with is to make the world map more interactive and more interesting. That would be one of my priorities for a possible expansion.
Oh, I'm getting wiped. Meanwhile, do, 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 do. From Slyhand, can you briefly talk about what is the philosophy of designing the tactical aspect of Battle Brothers? I can't quite grasp the reasoning myself, but I can't quite find many other games that are as fun as Battle Brothers in terms of the actual combats and enemy designs generally.
I think the core concept was that we tried to have a game. It's a very simulation like game. So if you want to look at it this way, that you have like two extremes. One is a simulation, and on the other extreme you have a puzzle. And a puzzle game has usually one correct solution, and the simulation doesn't care about correct solution. A simulation just tries to emulate the real world as accurately as possible. And Battle Brothers is more on the simulation end of things, where we say, okay, what's the use of an axe in real life, or club, or like how does armor work in real life? We try to model it in a way that makes sense, and we don't think about the gameplay first. So we think more about the simulation, and then the gameplay comes from that simulation. So that's a little bit of our design philosophy, and also we did back in the day, we did a lot of live action role play where we did some real life fighting, if you will, and that we were able to draw a lot of experience from that, especially with the morale of small units, and how people behave in combat, and when they start fleeing, for example. And it was really interesting because, of course, in the live action role play, nobody can really die. But still, people were fleeing battles when they were about to lose. So stuff like that, we try to get into the game as well, and model it as realistically as possible, while keeping things interesting. And just quickly regarding factions, when adding a new faction to the game, we're always asking ourselves, what new things does this faction bring to the game? And each faction should be a self-sufficient, dangerous faction. For example, the goblins, everybody just knew goblins from being like little punching bags that have no value, no danger to the player. But we made the goblins into a real faction that's just as dangerous as the orcs or as other factions, and that was a little bit surprising for many people. But for us, it was important that each enemy faction has their own play style, their own set of skills, equipment, and basically has a legitimate reason to be in the game, to bring something new to the table.
Mhm. Okay, continuing. I got wiped, so I had to restart the battle because paying attention to the chat and fighting at the same time is complicated. This one's for Casey, though. Will there be another novel set up in the Battle Brothers universe?
I'm just gonna ask him, Casey, will there be another novel in the Battle Brothers universe? Yes. Yeah.
That
He
one
said
was
yes.
easy.
Uh, yeah, he's already working on it. It will be soonish, and the plan is to have like a whole little series dedicated to it, and we are also looking into creating some more comic action. We had this little comic to go with the Flesh and Faith DLC, and yeah, we're also investigating if we could do a little bit more of that, which would be, I think, personally pretty fun.
Okay. What's the theme setting of Menace gonna be? I'm not sure if you want to talk about that yet.
Yeah, no, unfortunately I can't yet, but yeah,
Can't yet. Okay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Some people are asking about Steam Workshop, but that has been answered to death in the frequently asked question, so you don't need to go into that. Let me go through the
But you're very
Chat.
daring to play on veteran. I usually don't play on veteran.
No, I do. Problem is that I'm not paying attention, so that's what makes it particularly difficult. Um, well, there's a bunch of suggestions. Someone asks, does Menace have anything to do with the old prototype of a future game you made like 4 years ago?
Perhaps. Um, yeah, might be.
Perhaps. So,
Yeah, can't say more about it.
more.
I think that was in 2017, and we showed like one
Hmm.
picture or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Minty asks, are you continuing to work on Battle Brothers content while developing the new game?
So yeah, we did the Flash and Faith thing, which we did like in parallel to the Menace development. And unfortunately, it turned out to be like a really big strain on our resources, and it took us a couple of months to where we basically didn't work on Menace at all, because yeah, we do have a very high how do you say that? For us, it's very important what gets in the game and what not, and that what we add to the game really does make sense and bring something new to it. So we take a lot of time iterating, and we put some new things in the game, and then we test it and we discuss it a lot. So it takes a lot of our attention, and we try to do it in parallel, but it turns out to be too much. So right now, as long as we're developing Menace, we will focus on that, and and just support Battle Bros with just technical updates for now. But as we said before, never say never. So
Okay. Reading the whole chat. What do you think about the recent advancements in AI generated art and code? For example, ChatGPT. Do you think it will change the industry? That's a deep one.
yeah, what we're looking into right now a lot with Menace is computer generated voices, especially text to speech. Because Battle Brothers doesn't have any voice acting in it, and we really do want to have voice acting in the new game. And even just for prototyping, it can be really helpful to on the fly create voices for characters that you can just put in the game. And they sound like a little bit computeristic, or a lot, depends. And but for prototyping, it's really helpful. The thing is that as soon as you want to get into a little bit more interesting voices, for example, have a character express sarcasm, it's almost impossible with AI generated voices. And in the end, it's always a human being in the who is doing the real thing. And if you want to go for the highest quality, I think you have to have a real human. For artworks, Paul, as an original creator of all the arts, is very skeptical of AI generated art because a lot of these programs work in a way where they're basically stealing art from people on the internet and then just mixing it up with other artworks and then giving you another image where you can say, yeah, I didn't steal it. The AI stole it from a couple of people and just changed it up a little bit. So I think the whole copyright thing is really for all original creators, it's very difficult to see an AI copy their style and then dish out just images of what they created. So it's a very tricky question. But it definitely helps for prototyping or to get results fast, so that you can put something in the game and see how it works, and then maybe later polish up on it. So it will definitely accelerate the prototyping thing. But I personally, I think if you really want to go for high quality, at some point you have to involve humans for it.
Okay. Do. For Menace, will you be looking at a similar perk system as in Battle Brothers that does not constrict the player to strict classes, but gives you the freedom to experiment, or do you have a completely different system in mind?
Yeah, we for Battle Brothers. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but in the very beginning of the early access, where it was a completely different game, we had perk trees. So I think it was an offensive one, a defensive one, and a utility one, and they were also somewhat linear. But that was so restrictive, and it didn't work out at all. And I think the perk tree is something that we reworked the most throughout the development of the game. And well, we reworked everything, but the perk tree did take a lot of attention, and how it is in Battle Brothers right now, we personally think it's a very good system because it adds a lot of freedom for players to pick what they want and experiment with combinations. So in Menace it will definitely be a similar perk system.
Mhm. Harold says, since Battle Brother is probably at the end of its life, can we get a future-proofing update, sorry, that makes sure future mods are unlimited, options for bigger world size and such? I know in the last Q&A there was some talk about making Sato the mod ambassador, but nothing has come out of that.
It's that's still a topic, but the future proofing badge is definitely a good point, and I'm gonna take that down again and take it to the team.
Hey? Sorry, I missed one question from Enduriel. Uh, yeah, well, it's a technical question more targeted at Raps, but can we ask questions more targeted at Raps, the technical side of the team? And if so, last time I asked about whether you take a module approach to modding like Rimworld or Bannerlord. I believe Raps replied with take a look. Did you end up discussing that in any more detail? I didn't understand a word of that, so if you know what he's talking about.
Yeah, the thing is that, well, fortunately or unfortunately, Menace is taking up a lot of our resources for development, and with Battle Brothers being such a complex game, trying to load up all the Battle Brothers details back into your mental RAM, it really takes you out of development. So working on two things at the same time is really tricky, and we would have to plan ahead for quite a while that we can make some room for going back to Battle Brothers and doing some more or less things that are more, I would say, that work intensive on it. But so yeah, I'm sorry for the not satisfying answer, but it's the best I can give right now.
It is what it is. Someone says Santo and Debs are rookies playing Battle Brothers. Fair comment, though I gotta say that it's quite difficult to play with one eye while you're reading comments with the other one. Having said that, from Lori, in the future, will you be able to play as the bad guys? Playing as undeads or as orcs would be really cool. I guess that's already answered in your frequently asked questions in the forums, but your call.
Yeah, it's the thing is, it would be a completely different game because um, I don't know, an undead crew or orc crew or something would have completely different. They wouldn't be able to go into town and talk to the mayor and being bros with them or getting contracts. It's just in this world. It's not that they are just different kind of humans, but they are basically considered monsters that humans don't really interact with. So it wouldn't make sense for the world of Battle Bros, and also it would require it would be fun, but it would require the game to be reworked in lots of parts. And for example, the economy you're using, the currency you're using, and so on. So if you wanted to do that with so that it's actually really fun, it would be like an extensive work, almost to a point where it would make sense to probably make another game about it, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Arcadi asks, why was cavalry never added?
The classic.
At this point, I don't want legs or horses.
Yeah, the horses. Yeah, I can still answer that really quickly. It's the horses have been around since the very beginning, and the main issue with that is that the movement of the characters and all the logistics behind supporting horses would change up the dynamics of the game. For example, if you want to move a character around the battlefield, a horse has built up a lot of momentum. It cannot change its direction easily. How do you model that in the tactical combat? How do you model speeding up, slowing down, taking turns? And so on. And then you have all the logistics behind it, like where do you get them? How do you feed them? How do you have them in your inventory? What if they get wounded, and so on? So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and especially the thing is that it would change the scope of combat because horses are so much faster. You would need bigger battle maps. bigger battles, you would have different weapons and so on. It really changes a lot in the game. And the example that's always pulled there is the wolf riders, but the wolf is a really small creature that is very agile and can just jump around, change directions extremely quickly, and just has a small goblin on top. So we feel that it would be weird if we just gave the characters like a hobby horse head in front of them and make them move further. That wouldn't really feel like a horse. Yeah, that's some of the reasons why we don't have horses.
Mhm. Um, there's a question from, well, it's got a very long comment, but bottom line, would you consider making the game easier to mod? Again, this has been answered before, but your call.
Yeah, it's the thing is that yeah, I think I basically talked about that already, and yeah, only thing I can say is that the new game will be easier to mod because it's also run in Unity. It's not our own engine, and yeah, with Battle Brothers being a hobby project, like right from the beginning, we never planned on it being able to mod it at all. So yeah, there's a lot of things that come together there.
Hmm. Alandro asks, this is a good one. This is something I've speculated on for a long time, but what is the reason why you never implemented the legendary orc location?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I think in the end, it was that we didn't have a meaningful fight there to happen, like a different one. We could just cram it full of orcs, and that's it.
Hmm.
But I think we always wanted to have like a little story around it,
You
which
say
never.
that as you say that as if it's a bad thing, though.
We never got around to creating a little story and making it an interesting fight. And I think I'm pretty sure that in all the game files there's quite some stuff that never made it into the game that probably people can find. But just with the whole development of the game, there's so much stuff. If you could see how our game design documents, there's so much stuff in there that never made it into the game. For example, we had at some point we have an extremely extensive crafting system where you could even craft like normal weapons and daggers like in an MMO or something. And then yeah, but we scrapped that at some point. So there's a lot. I think there's even more stuff that's not in the game than that's what's actually in the game.
That's part for the course in games development. Anyway, I mean, leaving
Yeah.
stuff behind. Next question. Gladius asks, is there anything in particular, well, in particular, that's my words. Is there anything that inspired you to make the new game?
Yeah, the main inspiration for Battle Bros was the game that we wanted to play. We were like massive fans of the old XCOM, the UFO game, and we thought like there should be a game like this, but in a fantasy setting, and that's basically the pitch for Battle Bros. And with the new game, it's very similar. So we really liked Jack the Lions, which is also a big influence on Battle Brothers, as you're like a mercenary and so on. And with the new game, it's very similar. It's a game we really want to play, and we just hope that there's enough people out there who also want to play a game like that. And for Battle Brothers, this worked out really well. It turns out there's a lot of people who like the same things, and so we are really confident that it will be the same for Menace. But that's our main inspiration. What we're looking for to just play ourselves, and other people are not creating something like that, unfortunately.
Mhm. Okay. Well, there's already some people asking to test the new game, so you've got a test group here on Discord.
That's great.
Uh, feeding friendly. I'm too dumb to understand Battle Brothers lore. Can you tell me something about the connection between the old gods, the Empire, the Gilder, and Davkul?
The thing is that with the law, it's the whole idea about the Battle Brothers law is that it's intentionally left somewhat in the dark. So also internally, we never made like a timeline of everything that happened in the Battle Brothers world, or we didn't write like pages long descriptions of this god is for this and this is the background of Davkul and he's this guy and so on, because so in a medieval world, there's so much that it depends on the view of different persons, and that there could be events that different people make completely different connections with or attribute it to different entities, and leave people in the dark, like what did actually happen and what didn't happen, and just because some guy in the game world is claiming that the emperor did this and that, it doesn't mean that he did it. So it's part of this medieval world where the information are always unclear and are made up from different sources, that we intentionally never cleared up these things like 100%. And we also feel it's a point where people could get their own ideas about what happened there, and it leaves a little bit more to the mystery of a fantasy world if not everything is laid out clearly.
Okay. Um. Well, again, there's people. Tarold asks, "How does one become a playtester for Menace?" I guess that when the time comes, you'll let us know.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Gladius, do you plan full release or early access for the new game?
It's very highly likely that we'll also do an early access. It's different reasons for that. It's so this time we actually, it's not about the funding, which was the main reason for why we did it for Battle Bros. But this time um, it's more for playtesting, balancing, and so on. So we are really confident that it will not be a 2-year early access again, and
Hmm.
and but a much shorter one. And also, we had such good experiences with all the player feedback and everything that we think it will work very well for our game. Also, the new game is also highly procedural, because I think if you have a really linear game, early access usually doesn't work that well for you. But the new game will definitely be more on the procedural side again. So we are not really, we don't have the problem to spoil too much in an early access.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on. Do, 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 do. Uh-huh. Again, someone asking about stuff that was left behind. Johan asks, in relation to the Orc legendary location, kind of the same question, why not have the Brigand legendary location that briefly was part of the beta?
Um, I honestly, I don't really remember why we left it out. I can't recall that decision. Sorry, I don't know.
Hey? Yeah, well, Calandro repeatedly asks when is Rap opening an OnlyFans account.
Yeah, he's very
Anyway, the
secretive.
official question from Taroel, can you publish those game design documents you mentioned?
Sorry, didn't get that.
At some point, you mentioned game design documents,
Yeah.
asking if you can publish them at some point.
No. There's too much really bizarre stuff in there, and and also people then will think that, oh my God, how do these people work?
Okay, the next
It's
one from Citrine King. Well, that's it, it's not a question. It's a request. I want official Battle Brothers merchandising, so I can run around naked in a field like a nini with my authentic Orcish man splitter. So,
nice.
any chance of having Battle Brothers merchandise at some point?
Yeah, as you heard before, we're looking for somebody to help us with the marketing, and that would be one of the things that we really wanted to do. Um, I could also totally see a T-shirt with just the 3 stars on it from the talents. That would be funny as well. And yeah, also if we go to events, we never have T-shirts from our own game, which is a shame. And yeah, we definitely want to step up in the merchandising area, and just so yeah,
Fair
just so
enough.
that you get that.
Um, Beth Resin, why do you not give more options to speed up the game? So much for playability, but the combat can be a bit slow.
Yeah, I think that's up to personal preference, right? I think that the combat, if you disable the movement, so if you have instantaneous movement, I think it's rather quick. For me personally, it depends. Of course, if you do, like, if you have very large battles, it can take a while, but that shouldn't be like the norm, that you have like battles with like 50 people. So we feel that the combat is okay from the speed, regarding the speed, and yeah, the world map is yeah, could be faster. But we feel with the current options, and also with the retinue character who speeds up your party a little bit, we feel that it's still okay, and that the game it's also intentionally made not like too fast, and because we don't want people to stress out too much in the game.
Yeah, well,
And
I was about to say that. World map faster. What do you want? Ambushes even faster on on your head.
uh,
But
yeah.
anyway, da, 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 da. Sorry, there was a lot of new questions and I lost track.
But you're doing pretty well actually with the game. I'm impressed. I couldn't do that even if I was completely focused on it.
Thanks, I guess. Arlo asks, why do you never include? Why did you never include women, sorry, in Battle Brothers? From the history look, the Northern had women in their lines. I think this was also answered at some point in the frequently asked questions, right?
Yeah, that's one of the points. So I can totally say that for the next game, it will be a really different story.
Okay. What's the most ridiculous, strangest, interesting thing or creature or mechanic you consider to add into Battle Brothers but decided not to? From Show.
I think it's the like a really crazy creature. I think the with the gunpowder weapons, we already stretched it a lot, and with the Alps, and the Alps are
Mhm.
really tricky to create. And yeah, from the top of my head, it's a really difficult question because I think we have a lot of really funny and interesting characters in the game, and yeah, at one point we wanted to have more legendary weapons in the game that have more like magical abilities, but in the end we decided against it because it would dilute the setting too much and turn it too much into a high fantasy setting. And yeah, one thing that we had on our minds as well was a how to say that, like a chaos or demonic influence where you have certain characters turn into like a demonic presence, but to have that in a way that it doesn't yeah, that it still works within the game's universe is a bit tricky, so we
Mm.
decided to not do that.
One from me, the game has a lot of creatures based in Central European folklore, right? Which is a not very well known folklore.
Yes, yeah.
I guess it was a conscious decision. I mean, you're German after all, but wasn't it risky at first in your mind, like going from for creatures that no one would easily identify by their names?
Yes, we. I think a big inspiration there was the Witcher series because they did the same thing. They have a lot of creatures in it which are from, yeah, Eastern European folklore, and I really loved it about the game that I don't see the same creatures I've seen like 100 times, but I see very distinct and new creatures with new names and abilities that I don't know, and that was really inspiring to me personally, and that's why we wanted to go back into more of the real folklore and to dig up like sort of weird creatures. And for example, the Alps are based on like a German creature that's called an Aufhocker, which is supposed to be like it's a really weird creature. It's like a mix of a vampire and a ghost and everything, and it's really interesting. And I think it's a good thing if you have this fantasy world with orcs and goblins. Everybody knows. Then you have to add something in the mix that's new to the people and that's interesting. So yeah, but I
Mhm.
guess The Witcher was a really big inspiration there.
Okay. Next question from Gladius. Have you played any new games recently that you loved?
You mean besides Escape from Tarkov? That's a classic. No, I try to play as many games as possible, so that yeah, I think I talked about this at some point earlier, but for if somebody is writing books, then you definitely have to read books, and I think for game development it's the same. If you're developing games, then you have to play games and don't stick to a certain genre, but to play as many different games as well, being like city builders or shooters or platformers or everything. Some of them I play like just very shortly, but I still manage to take something from all the games. For example, this Marvel game by Firaxis. It's I'm totally not a Marvel guy, but still there were some really interesting mechanics, especially their take on how they manage difficulty in the game, which was really cool. And so I think you can take something from almost every game that you're playing, and that's what's really fun to me as well.
Mhm. From Beth Resen again, any chance for the four schools quests, more very late game content? Again, I guess that's the same answer as before. Right now, Battle Brothers is too distracting for the development of Menace, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. But the late game it depends a lot. Like what is late game, because the games usually was balanced to basically beat like the first late game crisis and then sort of fizzle out. And we never really intended the game to be played for like 800 days or 900 days or something. So it really depends. But yeah, I think if we anticipated a little bit better that people would play for that long, we would probably add some more bit mechanics for the very late game that also include more money sinks and stuff like that, which we try to add it with the DLC. But yeah, of course, at some point you will just have infinite money basically.
Yeah, it happens in all games. Okay, from Balmipor, he says, I'm speaking about future with at least Menace being released and commercially successful as prerequisites. But would you mind making Battle Brothers open source someday?
Um, that depends, but I think if you basically created something, yeah, that's a very it's also like a very personal creation. I think, and as long as it's your company is also thriving off of that, it's a very hard decision to make something open source, because we just also need the development funds from Battle Brothers still. Yeah.
Hey, next one. Juan Val, when will we be able to enjoy more art from Master Paul?
Very soon, as soon as they announce the new game, there will be loads of new artworks coming out. And I think some of you found his old, I don't know, DeviantArt page or whatever. I just saw there was a Green Knight posted. Somebody said, "Oh, this is a really Battle Brothers style thing," and it actually was drawn by Paul. It's like 20 years ago or so. So
Paul
yeah.
is actually not a trained artist, right? He didn't study art. I mean,
No, yeah, exactly. He's just self-taught. He just did it as a hobby, and then after completing his studies as a geologist, he started to work as a concept artist at a Hamburg-based company. But at that point, it was all just self-taught. Yeah.
as an amateur artist myself, the bastard. Okay, next question. Very specific one from Gladius. What software has Paul used to make art for Battle Brothers? Photoshop?
Yeah, it's I think it's mainly Photoshop. He did just a very little bit of 3D sketching, and for the new game, it's a lot more needed to do some 3D sketching. But yeah, just Photoshop usually.
Okay. Doomspoon. Will Overhype be appearing in conventions in the future? I know the studio is situated in Germany, and there's someone from Switzerland I'd love to hop by and say hi.
Yeah, we will be in the I think in the beginning of March. There's the Hamburg Games Conference where we'll be actually giving a talk about. It's basically like a Battle Bros postmortem, and very similar to the one Paul gave in Bilbao in November. And then we hope to actually be on Gamescom this year with a booth and present the new game. But this is still up in the air if the game's ready, so that we can actually show it and people can play a little bit of it at Gamescom. That would be ideal. But yeah, we only will do that if we really feel the game's ready.
Okay. Citrine King. Is there an update on the RAM increase? It's been with the team for a long time, and I'm curious if you guys have come to an actual decision. It should be a simple fix. No?
Exactly. Yeah, I talked about this earlier. I will
Ah,
take it
yep.
back to the team. Yeah.
Fair enough. Beth Resen, if you like The Witcher, please play the game. No got next gen update and read. That's not a question. Just a comment for the audience. Popcorn Otters, well done for taking the risk and choosing Central European folklore. It paid off massively. Also, it was really rewarding for second language German speakers. So, hats off to you.
Thanks.
Calandro, favorite origin both by flavor and by gameplay.
I personally really like the. I'm leaving aside the anatomists and the oath keepers, because I absolutely love the anatomists. It's just so much fun to go and hunt for the different enemies and then get a bonus from defeating them. It's just a really fun mechanic. But if we talk about the original original origins, I personally really like the town militia, because it's this it's got this very underdog feel to it, where you have like very peasanty company, and you have like loads of them. That's really fun. And then I of course I also love the Duff Cool guys, because it has this unique mechanic with the sacrifices, and it feels very different from the usual playthrough. But I understand that a lot of people really love the is it called Lone Wolf? I don't know, where you have basically like a main character, and I think that's one of the most popular ones.
Okay. Juan Bal says, are you happy with the AI of the new game? It will be smart as in Battle Brothers?
Yeah, we're putting a lot of work into the AI, because I think Battle Brothers is thriving, or depending a lot on the AI, and to have all the factions play differently, and the AI making somewhat smart decisions, and not everybody's just running at you like a Wiedergänger. And the new AI will be the combat will be very, I don't know, I don't want, yeah, more complex even. So the AI has to work a lot more with positioning and anticipating things. So it's a really challenge. But we definitely committed to put a lot of resources into the AI, because like a strategy game or a tactics game with bad AI is just it's just no fun.
Hmm. From Physics Cat, this one is for Paul though, but well, I'll read it aloud anyway. Is there a public, complete, high-resolution compilation of all the concept art for Battle Brothers? Because it's very beautiful. I know there's some on the website, some in the art corner, but I mean, including all the pieces from dev talks, articles, Steam news, or in-game blurbs. There isn't such a thing, right? Like the full art book. There
No.
is an art book.
Yeah, it's an art book, but it's just a PDF, so the images are not that big in it. And yeah, but there's no collection or something from the Battle Brothers art right now.
Okay. Mm, Taroeld says, did you consider making retinue followers more complex at some point? I feel like there's a lot of design space left there.
Yeah, I think that the with the retinue followers, it was a bit of a tricky thing to get them in the game, because it was at a very late stage in development. It's with a Blazing Deserts with a full DLC, and at that point, it would have been a lot easier if we incorporated a mercenary track, or however you want to call it, earlier, because it was the abilities that we could give were doubling a lot with other things in the game, and to keep them unique and still and not have them overpowered, it was really tricky. And also the main issue was that they had a lot of overlap with the origins, and so we didn't want to just tag origin abilities to them. So we were already really in a tight spot with the design at that point, and with adding new things to the game. And yeah, we tried our best to have them interesting but not overpowered, and also not overlap too much with the origins.
Okay. Well, Gladys asks a question, but I feel it's been answered already. Is the new game still a sandbox, or is it going to be more plot/campaign driven?
It will be a little bit less sandboxy, but the thing is that Battle Brothers is basically 100% sandbox. So even if you add like a little bit of guidance or plot or story or whatever, you would still have something less sandboxy than Battle Brothers. And I personally always had the issue that people would ask me, what's the goal of the game? What's the goal of Battle Brothers? And I couldn't say, because it doesn't really have a goal. It's basically just surviving. And also one of the problems that I personally have with the game is that the motivation as a mercenary captain is a very weak one because your only intrinsic motivation is to make money. And money is very weak motivation if you compare it to other situations where you have a character that's, I don't know, fighting for his survival or his land or whatever. He has a really strong internal motivation. And for Battle Brothers, the player doesn't really have that. And it works out really well for the game, but I think there's only so much you can do to motivate a player with yeah, you want to make some money, and that's why I personally feel that we wanted something to be a little bit more meaningful, and so there will be a little bit more story, but all the procedural elements in the game will definitely be there so that you can play the game your way and your style, and definitely at the core, it's a story generator, which Battle Brothers is, and the new game also will have a lot of that, like emergent gameplay, I think it's called. Yeah. So
Mhm. Luke asks if Hand of Blood's Let's Play series, Hand of Blood for non-German speakers. I'm not German, but I know him. He's a very well-known German YouTuber. If they are actually driving sales for the game.
yeah, so far it's we always have been looking at how different outlets impact the sales. For example, if you have a gaming magazine or if you have a Twitch person or YouTube or whatever cover the game, how much does it affect sales? And so far there has like only very little correlation between that, but with the latest Hand of Blood videos, it has been pretty insane. So we have been like 3, 4, 5 times the sales that we usually have. It's extreme. So
Mhm.
yeah, we've been even been in the top sellers on Steam a couple of times now after the series was started. So it has a really big impact.
Yeah, the guy is massive. Okay, next one. Well, more questions about Menace. Will Menace have a base slash headquarters for a roster?
Yeah, so
Uh,
for better, sorry, yeah, maybe I can just say a little bit about it more in relations to Battle Brothers. Because in
mhm.
the original Battle Brothers concept, maybe I talked about this at some point, it was really close to XCOM, and we basically copied XCOM one by one because you had a base that you would be building up. Until at some point we decided to go for the traveling mercenary company and get rid of the base. Yeah, a little bit of that will be coming back, but not to the extent
Mhm.
that you have, like, I don't know, in RimWorld or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Someone's asking Gladius if you plan on making blog entries every Friday, Dev Diaries, like you did with Battle Brothers, because he thinks it was a brilliant way to create a hype for the Battle Brother expansions.
Yeah, definitely. We learned that that's one of our key things that we learned during the development, that we made these regular updates or yeah blogs, which usually did have a lot of content in them, I think, and we totally want to do that again. But once we start doing them, we really want to keep them up. So we can only start them once we can see when we can release the game into early access, so that we don't run out of material to write about, and that we can keep like the constant pace up of having one every other week, so that people don't get disappointed, or that we have to do filler blogs where it's just, yeah, this guy this week we worked really hard, and because we really want to have meat on those dev blogs. But we will definitely do them again, and really looking forward to share all the ideas about Menace there.
There's one for Casey. It was, will there be any more lore on who Young Anselm actually was?
Um, Maybe I can just ask him, Casey. Will there be any more? Yeah, he just told me that if he might be showing up in the extended comics that we might be working on.
Okay. Waiting for the next question because we ran out of questions. Shaub, thank you. Have you considered giving each noble house a unique theme? So, what was the reason you decided not to do so? Procedural generation, right?
Yeah, I have like 2 pages of Excel spreadsheets in the game design document just on the noble houses. And so the original idea was to give them different characteristics. For example, one was more like a tyrant. One was more like a sheriff character, and then they had an alignment which would be good or neutral. And based on these characteristics, they would offer different contracts. So, for example, if somebody was a tyrant, he would offer you contracts to put down civil unrest or to press money from the farmers. Or if somebody was like more of a sheriff kind of guy, he would pay you to keep the roads safe and stuff like that. And these characters would be procedurally generated. And unfortunately, it turned out it was too complex, the system, and too much work at the point in time, because creating contracts is very, very complicated in Battle Brothers, and it takes a lot of time. So at that point, I had planned for like, I don't know, 120 different contracts. Um, but unfortunately, we didn't have the resources to pull through with that. But I think it would be really cool. And one of the few things that's left over from that is the mottos of the noble houses, which I personally really like because many of them are actual historical mottos. And these mottos would then fit the character of the house. And yeah, so unfortunately, that didn't make it in. And but I still feel like if we were to do an expansion, we could definitely pick up on the
Mhm.
noble houses again, because there's so much room for improvement there.
Someone sent me a direct message with a question or comment. Why there are no orc two-handed legendary weapons?
That's a good question. I think that's just, I don't know, maybe it's an oversight. Sorry for the yeah, but there's no specific reason for that.
Okay. Mortimer, you have painting system which works pretty nice first couple of days, but once you get into the game, you can paint anything. Hence, you can make themed company. At the end, they always look like a band of random dudes. Painting all armor shields will be awesome for personalization.
Yeah, I totally agree. Here we're coming back to the topic of 2D and 3D, because in 3D it's much easier to create different color variations on the fly, because you have different technical solutions for that kind of thing. But in 2D we have to hand paint all the different the sprites, and that would be for a different color that would be on a shield. You have to basically repaint every shield by hand, and then you have to repaint the damaged version and the destroyed version and the inventory version. And this is just done by one guy, who is Paul. And
Mhm,
so the coloring of items is something that we just couldn't manage to automate. And that's the reason why the options there are rather limited, unfortunately.
mhm. Next question. Is the absence of named shields in shops a choice?
I think we always were aware of having too many items in the like named items in the shops, because we wanted to keep them really special. And at some point it turned out that we had like enough named items in the shops that we said, okay, we don't want any more. But there's not like a really big reason behind it, so
Mhm.
it's a bit random.
Stone asks, do you feel the noble houses are outdated? They are much easier than Southerners.
Uh, yeah, we had a lot of discussion about it. That the thing is that everything that we add to the game is usually perceived at least stronger than something that has been in the game. Sometimes it's because the old things in the game, you know how to fight, and but it's with the noble houses, with the Southerners and the noble houses, it's more that we well, let's start again. The noble houses have a very different, a very similar setup to how the players usually play the game. So they have they have a very sturdy front line. They have two-handed back lines. They have crossbowmen, and they are basically emulating how most players play the game. So we intentionally designed the southern states to be a challenge for this kind of play style, and that's why they're usually beating the northern noble houses, because they were intentionally designed in a way to counter these tactics. But this is something that's not, the idea behind it is not that we want the southern houses and the city states to win the war, but it's more about to offer a new challenge and a different play style for the player, and that's basically the reason behind it. So they have a couple of weapons that work really well against the northern noble houses, but the main reason is because we want them to work well against the player.
Okay. Mino asks, what concepts or monsters or enemies were cut from Battle Brothers that you would have liked to see if you had more time? I think we've gone over this already, but your call.
Yeah, I think yeah, we got a little bit. I was talking about the demonic things. There's a lot of stuff that I personally would really love to make an iteration of. For example, something that's very well known and very classic is like the I don't know, Lizard Man, for example, which has been done over and over again. But I think in Battle Brothers we would be able to make like a really cool iteration of lizard people that would be really cool looking and had some really nice mechanics, and so that's something that at some point in my life I can totally see us create some lizard man. Yeah, that would be nice.
Calandro asks, how did you feel when the whole modding scene was, for lack of a better term, forced upon the game?
The thing is that we were always, I know, very unhappy about how little we were able to support it, and the thing is that most of it comes down to resource constraints and support that we could offer. Because I personally think that it adds a lot to any game, and as I said before, there are so many games that basically don't work without mods at all. So we always knew that at some point it was inevitable to come to the game. But for us, it was important to make clear that we don't have the resource to really support it how we would like it to. And I'm personally also still really advertising for the next game that we make it easier to mod, because that's, yeah, for me it's a really important thing.
Okay. Just a second. Let me go over the chat again. Gladius, do you think using game engines like Unity and Unreal is always a better choice now comparing to self-made engines? Is coding in Unity easier for you? CD Projekt Red recently switched from in-house engine to Unreal, sorry.
Yeah, that's a good question. One second. There are some questions on the Steam.
On the Steam chat, okay?
Yeah, if you've seen that, I just mentioning.
No,
this
I
thing.
haven't.
Okay, so the thing is that initially for Menace we wanted to go with Unreal, and then we got a little bit into the engine, and then decided to go for Unity. So now we have a lot of experience with Battle Brothers being created in our own engine, and now switching over to a very established, like the most established engine, I think, Unreal or Unity. And one of the things is that we wanted to grow the company, and growing a company with an unknown in-house engine is extremely tricky. You're much more likely to find somebody who's versatile, who's well known in Unity or in Unreal, and it's so much easier then to grow the team. And also the amount of work it took for us or we're not really able to implement different languages, the modding problems, and then the porting, which was a really insane amount of work porting it. They basically had to rewrite the game for different platforms. All of that basically pushed us into this time going with an established engine, because we don't want to lose so much time on the overhead. At the same time, I have to say that there are lots of things in Unity that are really annoying, and if you want, there's some features that you think would be like a completely normal feature in any kind of engine, and they either don't exist or don't work. And you have to do a lot of work even if you're using an established engine. But still, I feel for the size of a company that we are right now, it's the right choice, and it's also easier to grow as well.
Okay, we're moving on to the Steam chat with their questions. Do, 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 do. Uh, I'm skipping questions that have already been answered. Will you be adding weather effects and will they affect gameplay?
Yeah, for Better Bros, we wanted to have more weather effects and interesting ones. I think right now it's only nighttime that has an actual gameplay effect. So that's something that we definitely want to have, like having I don't know, sandstorm or fog or heavy rains or whatever. Something that we always wanted to have for Better Bros, but for some reason never got around to implement in a meaningful way.
Mhm. Next question is the
This fight is looking really
well,
dire.
yeah. Moving on to the Steam chat was not a good idea for me playthrough. Anyway, well, more a question for the music, but maybe you've heard something. For whomever composed the music, were there any specific inspirations?
Yeah, the music is by the Breakdown Epiphanies, and who are actually doing the soundtrack for Terra Invicta, if you know that. It's basically from the guys who made the Long War mod. It's their own take on a I don't know, grand strategy, if you want, if you will. And they are creating music for that, so they are still in the business and doing their thing. And I think one of the main inspirations was yeah, very classic movie soundtracks, like of course Lord of the Rings, but also things like Conan. And it's to have yeah, to have them on the team was like a really big boon, because yeah, they made some really amazing soundtracks, even if they're not full-time musicians, so they're basically doing it on the side.
As you can see, I'm pulling a tactic known as Brave Sir Robin, legging it away.
Yeah, that
Anyway,
level 3 Nastera is yeah.
yeah, when I saw the level 3 Nacho, I should have fled already, but I was paying attention to the Steam chat and I didn't really realize what was going on until it was too late. Uh, so, how many people work at Overhype at the moment?
So right
From
now we
Luca.
are real like full-time employees. We are 7 in total. So with Better Brothers, we were 3, and then we had freelancing. For example, Casey, who did the writing for Better Brothers, was just freelancing for us for Better Brothers, and but now joined the team full time. And yeah, we're 7, and now we're looking for number 8. So yeah, growth is going really quickly. We're also using outsourcing studios to help with 3D assets, for example, and animations.
Hey, mamas, let's talk.
Which the team is then too small to have like a full-time animator on it, and yeah. But the production value and also the budget that the new game has is yeah, a lot higher than Battle Brothers had.
Mhm. Okay. Will there be vehicle combat in Menace, even just as fire support, or will it be purely infantry based?
If I say vehicle, then I'm giving away the setting, right?
Well,
I can
vehicle or animal based
animals, but
combat.
I can say that the scope will be bigger than in Battle Brothers, so battles will be bigger in
Fair
in
enough.
in, in all senses. Yeah,
Yeah, well, cavalry. Yes, Taruel has a good point. It doesn't need to be called vehicles; can be called
exactly.
cavalry in all its
Yeah.
glory. Uh, Beef Deluxe in Steam says any intention on adding a re-roll mechanic to even out the random number generator.
No, not really. No.
Nah, we're stuck with our bad luck.
Yeah, I just I got a message from this Hand of Blood guy that because he has some really bad luck in his playthrough, and he gave me a little sneak peek that it's getting even worse in the next episode. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Looking forward to seeing someone suffer.
the 100% Battle Brothers experience.
Yeah, I'm actually suffering right now because I
Yeah,
lost half my company, so
yeah.
I'm not strong enough to fight anyone. So I'm hoping to get some postman contracts.
It's a very realistic depiction of the game. So yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
definitely. I'm having the full experience. Okay, let me check if I've skipped any questions because there are a few that I'm skipping because I feel like you have already answered them. Now there are three people writing at the same time, so I guess they took the hint and they're sending more questions.
Yeah, that's always good. Yeah, it's such a shame that I cannot share any more information about Menace because, as all game developers say, I'm really excited about the new project. But I really am, and I think that it will be a lot of fun for people who like Battle Brothers because it has
Hmm.
it's a rather different animal, but it's still got all the things that I think makes Battle Brothers enjoyable, and so yeah,
Okay.
it's
Look, here's a good one from Gladius. Biggest mistakes you made during game development.
Yeah, one of the first biggest mistake was actually not game development itself, but it was setting up the company, and we didn't properly do all the legal stuff, and that came back to bite us in the ass. But so I can just recommend getting all your legal stuff in order before you start a company. And the biggest mistake, it's really difficult to say because for us, Battle Bros has been such a big success, and people seem to enjoy it a lot, and so it's very hard to find, like, to pinpoint a spot where you could say we did a big mistake because everything has turned out rather well. So I'm really happy
Hmm.
about that.
In the end,
Yeah,
you survived at least.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, but I couldn't put my finger on it. There's a lot of small things that could have gone better. It would have been a good thing to be able to connect more with other developers in the early time of the game. Yeah, we didn't have any money to start the company. That was a really big problem. But again, I think it was the right call to not go into debt because we were really dreading that. Yeah, it's a difficult one. Yeah.
Mhm. Um, Taroeld asks if you follow the meta for the game, if you have any thoughts about it, because you have nerfed some stuff in the past, like fatigue neutral becoming popular, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we do. Every time we do like sort of a balancing patch. We go through the current metas, and I personally am a little bit more in favor of letting players play how they want to play. But at some point, it becomes pretty obvious that it's or let it put me that way. If there are things in the game that are being used in a way where it's absolutely not intended by us, then it's something that we will change. It's not that we say, yeah, we don't like this play style or something, because I personally, it's a single player game, right? So you can play it like however you want to play it. But if there's something that doesn't fit, like our concept of the game, in the sense of that it doesn't make sense within the game, that, for example, this combination of perks or skills is so much stronger than the other one, then we want to work on that. And also, it's important to us to make the most amount of builds viable without making like a clean, or making like a clear winner, because then it's very boring. Then you just read up on one guide and then you beat the game. But it's always important to have multiple different ways of play the game being viable, and not being, oh, you're playing this way, that's not efficient. And but I think we managed to get in a rather okay position, where different guides give you different ways to beat the game effectively, and they are not all the same. So that's really important to us.
Mhm. Okay. Someone asked, well, actually, I think you don't code, but he says, when did you realize you wanted to code? What was your first project? You are not a coder, actually, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm more of the marketing guy, or business guy, if you will. I'm doing all kinds of, yeah. I'm doing basically everything in the company. accept coding and actually drawing images.
Mm.
So yeah, I couldn't tell.
Yeah, someone asks if there is a second BB novel in the works. Yes, there is. That was answered before. Physics Cat, how did the original members of the Overhype team meet? How did you get started in game development? And are there any earlier games that any of you made on your own that are public?
We like Paul and me, we're twin brothers, and we've been working like creating games like forever and since being kids. And at some point, we started doing it a little bit more sophisticated with a Game Maker back in the day and RPG Maker. But those games were basically just proof of concepts and not really full games. And Christoph worked on a couple of games, but I think they're not publicly available. And we met through GameDevNet, which is a forum sort of where you can put your project and then you can pitch your project basically as an unpaid hobby project. We did that back in the day, and people could then get together to create like a hobby project. And that's basically how Battle Brothers started. It was just a hobby project, and I just if anybody wants to get into developing games, I can, especially if you're like us, if you come from different backgrounds that are not game backgrounds, then creating and starting a hobby project like that is totally the best place to start, because you get to know the right people, and also you get a lot of experience with how you actually create a game, and how you like what kind of people you need, and how to scale a project and how to finish a project and so on.
Yeah, that's something that I've heard a lot of game developers say, like that the best way to put your foot in the door for making games is to actually make games, to start making your small games and show the world that you can deliver.
Exactly. For us, it was really difficult because neither Paul nor me could program, and creating a computer game is like most of it is programming. Like without a programmer, you cannot create a computer game at all. So, but we didn't. Yeah, we didn't stop there, and we tried just to find somebody who could program and who loved the project. And fortunately, we found Christoph, who's still like now our technical director, and he's take care of all the technical stuff.
And the last question of that last barrage was, no, sorry, you'd already answered that one. Next question by No Way to Win. Would you recommend us some other games, maybe your favorite games? It doesn't need to be tactical strategy games. So Escape from Tarkov and
Yeah, back in the day, I played a lot of League of Legends, of course. I still love Civilization. Then recently, I played Riftbreaker, which is a really cool game. What else? Terraria, I played really a lot because it's a very chill game. Usually, I like a lot of chill games. And then, of course, back in the day, Jack the Lions 2, all the Heroes of Might and Magic games, but only the first three parts. After this were not so good. And then recently I started again Witcher 3, played a little bit of Cyberpunk, couldn't get into it unfortunately. But the Witcher game's really good. Um, yeah, there's like all kinds of games. V Rising, of course, Valheim, like all those kind of games, played it a lot as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really hard to pick up one.
Taro would like to know why Rap never join us or post anything really. Join for the chat with the devs or this kind of event.
It's basically he's more of a private guy. So he's been also working from home like all the 7 years now. It's like that Paul and me would be in the office and he would be working from home, because it's I don't know, maybe it's like some programmers would be like this and prefer to be like in their own speed and their own environment to be working. And also, as you can probably see, like even Paul and me, who are like I don't know, rather sociable, if you will. We don't like to post selfies on the internet, or it's very hard to find pictures of us, because we always want to put the product in the first place and not ourselves. So yeah, in general, I think we are a company that doesn't really share a lot about the persons behind it, which we are
Mhm.
doing a little bit more now, but still we are very secretive, if you will.
Okay. Another question from LSD. As game developer yourself, what do you think about the concept of early access? Battle Brothers seem to be a good example of the benefits of the concept, but many times I've had kind of disappointing experiences with AI games.
Yeah, I touched on that a little bit. It's a really big problem because now, for example, I just talked about V Rising or Valheim, uh, where I had a lot of fun with the games, but now I'm at a point where I experienced most of it, and I'm waiting for updates, and they're just really, really slow to come out. And having sitting like on lots of early access games and just every month going back, oh, is there something new? Is there something new? It can be really tiring. And so I can totally get like sort of like an early access fatigue that people might have, because waiting for 1 or 2 years, or some games are even longer in early access, and just keep coming back for to have like very bite-sized small updates can be really frustrating. And so um, we try to, if like when we're doing an early access, we try to be really sure about the development, so that we can give meaningful updates in a reasonable amount of time, which of course would be is the ideal place. And I think back in the development of Battle Bros, we had like the longest update time without an update was 6 months, and that was the world map update. But in those 6 months, we basically reworked the whole world map of the game, and it was a completely different game afterwards. So I
Mhm.
still feel it was really long, but there was definitely a lot of new stuff there.
Okay, I almost got wiped out again. I'm struggling a little bit right now, but still surviving though. Feeding Friendly is writing, so let's see what he or she has to say. Oh, there's another one on Steam. Have you played Dwarf Fortress? If so, what is your opinion on it and its development?
It's well, I try to get into RimWorld, and that's basically Dwarf Fortress Lite, right? So and I still bounced on that. So I actually never got into Dwarf Fortress. It was for me. It has a very high barrier to entry, not unlike Battle Brothers. So I actually could never muster the time to get into it. But in the end, it's of course it's an also emergent gameplay, story generator kind of game. And I think if you get into it, it can be really fun. But unfortunately, I don't know it well enough to give an educated opinion.
Mhm. Oh, nope. Sorry then. Um, this is a oddly specific question. Favorite heroes of Might and Magic 3 faction?
That's a really difficult one. But I personally always loved the undead for some reason. I thought they were really cool, and especially like undead dragons and stuff like that. But maybe I'm mixing up heroes 2 and 3. But also in 3, I really love the, how do you call, like the magic faction, or the yeah. Is it the magic
Mhm,
faction? I don't know. Yeah, but those are some really cool because they're really fresh. And
mhm.
yeah.
Good question from Feeding Friendly. I wanted to ask if pulling enemies into three-way battles was an intended mechanic.
No, that's basically from the simulation aspect of the game, where we just programmed that you could, the two parties that meet on the battlefield, on the world map, then get into a battle, and that's just a consequence of that. So we didn't sit down and think, oh, you should lure people to fight with monsters or something. It's basically just a concept, just a consequence of how the game mechanics work, and if people find a way to, I don't want to say exploit it, but to have fun with it, yeah, then that's a cool thing. So
Mhm.
yeah, but it was not really intentional design.
Gladius asks if you are into board games.
Um, yeah, actually, we do have a lot of board games in the office. Unfortunately, we have too little time to play them. So yeah, back in the day, we played a lot of Hero Quest, of course, which is still one of our favorite games, and Warhammer Quest. If anybody knows that, it's also really cool. But getting into the newer ones like Gloomhaven, or new is is relative, and Descent and games like that. Yeah, unfortunately, we're lacking the time for it.
Mhm. I've started to paint my Hero Quest miniatures at
Nice.
37 years old.
That's a good one. We started with it at some point, but we only get half through.
Okay, let me check Steam again. I already read all the questions over there. Okay, we don't have new questions, but there's a lot of people writing, so let's give them a minute or two.
Yeah, I have also something else. I think I hinted at this in an earlier talk, but if you wanted to do some testing for us, some Brothers related testing, if you're available online as well, then also you could drop us a line at contact@overhypestudios.com because we're testing something new, and yeah, it's I think it's a really cool project, and yeah, just drop me a quick line if you're interested in being like a beta tester for that. I can't give any more info on it yet, but I will give more info personally then.
Give it a go, guys, if you want to test something for Battle Brothers.
Something. Exactly.
Uh,
It
Again, this is a very oddly specific question. Uh, just a second, because I only have one guy left in my company, and I'm getting pursued by brigands. Feeding friendly, are you open to adding war crimes to Battle Brothers, like cannibalism or exploding war dogs? Why would you do that?
I think there are some really questionable things, especially in the events that are probably well known. Um, yeah, we have that usually just in the text because the world of Battle Brothers is like this really dark, menacing medieval world, which is really brutal and pretty crazy as well.
Yeah,
And
talking
so
about dark, menacing, brutal, Melon Mooger.
exactly,
Where that
yeah, the
came?
melon
Where that
mugger.
come from?
I don't know. He just showed up someday. Nobody knows where he comes from, but it's of course a really hilarious event, and yeah, it's just. I think it's really good for Better Bros. Who wants to have like a little bit of humor, dark humor as well, without this baking like destroying the atmosphere. And as Casey is doing the writing for Menace as well, it will have it will have also like his very specific style and a little bit of humor as well, which I think is perfectly fine for a game as long as it doesn't become like too like too much like a clown show.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, now there are people commenting about funny events. The bro that takes part in the tarring event but uses the chickens to tar the guy is top tier funny.
And there are so many events in the game that at some point it's yeah,
What's
some of
your
them are
favorite
extremely
event?
rare. Um, it's I mean, I would be really boring if I say the Melon Mugger because he's really funny. But he's an all-time favorite. I think the most loved event is the bow crafting event. People really love it when the bowyer is crafting the masterwork bow. Yeah, but mainly for gameplay reasons, right?
Hmm. Yeah, well, the alt event got me. That one was cruel. You know the bad dream.
Yes, that's hilarious. Yeah, I got somebody else the other day, and every time that happens, Casey is really happy. And and yeah, I think that's also a really good one because it was one of our design principles that you should never ever lose a character through an event because it's just too frustrating. And to have this one event where you actually lose somebody would be it doesn't match with any of the other events, so people did never expect it and get really shocked. And using this shock and people not expecting it to set them up is really funny. Yeah.
Mhm. Question from Stone. Lore question: is the Conqueror the Emperor or like a captain of his?
It's not specified in the law like what exactly it is. As I said before, like earlier in the beginning, that it's for us it's important to not 100% be clear on anything. We don't want to take it to levels of what was it, Lost, like where this island where all kinds of crazy things happen and nothing is explained. But at the same time, we want to leave a little bit of room for the imagination and creativity of players to fill in the gaps.
Mhm. Physics Cat says one problem with Battle Brothers is that when a player finds a new enemy type, they don't know the mechanics of the fight yet and often get rolled. Were there ever any ideas for limited exposure to new enemy types to teach players what to expect before fighting them for real?
I agree that that is definitely a big problem, and it's a bit of a combination of problems that also Battle Royale is lacking in any kind of comeback mechanic where you lose a lot of people that you can actually come back really quickly. And the combination of these two things make it really hard. It's not about just new enemies, but also about bigger groups of enemies that you know, because bigger groups then can play very differently. And if people have a really hard fight and lose like half the company, then it's most of the times it's basically game over. And we have been all the time. We've been really struggling with creating like a comeback mechanic that makes sense. But the problem is if you make it too easy for people to replace losses, then they would just dump the guys at the first possibility and just pick somebody who's better. And also losses stop mattering at all, and you don't get this clutch moment where you're just really praying for one attack to hit or not hit. And if it doesn't really matter if you lose a guy, then you lose the tension of this. And striking a balance between all these points is really tricky. And there's of course the training hall, which was one of the things that we implemented to make it a little bit easier to recover from losses. But if you're late in the game and you lose somebody who's level like max level and everything, then it's really hard to come back from that. And all these problems play together into some sort of like downward spiraling, which we for Menace we do have a really cool mechanic that is definitely preventing the spiraling in both ways, and which I think will be really cool to see.
Mhm. Someone asks, Hastar says, could you work with Wizards of the Coast to make a Battle Brothers type game in the Dungeons and Dragons world? That would be one of the greatest games ever with the Dungeons and Dragons monsters and classes with the incredible gameplay of Battle Brothers. I feel like Dungeons and Dragons will probably not be the right tabletop RPG system for Battle Brothers.
Yeah, the thing is that it's very high powered, right? So you have like all this magic kind of things which we don't really have rules for in Battle Brothers, and don't really fit our kind of game. What I personally would totally see, it's basically like a really total conversion. And at some point in my life, I really want to make a Warhammer game, be it fantasy or 40k game. They're like literally no good 40k games, but still, yeah, that's something that I would totally be up for. But getting into an existing IP has its own challenges, and especially with a very well established IP, you get into a position where you have to negotiate with the existing community about how you see their IP, and then you get into a really difficult situation where you have to bring something new and interesting to the table, but at the same time have to satisfy an existing community who've been loving this IP for like 20, 30 years. And that's a really big challenge, which we are really aware of, let's say.
Mm. Request or suggestion from Happy Organism. Can you make Fangshire Helm viable standalone and not required to rebuy the game? Just
Um,
food for thought.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Jubek, were there other perks you considered adding to the game?
Yeah, we with the perks, we settled at some point with this amount of perks that we have in the game, but yeah, as I said before, with in the game design document, there is loads of perks that we decided to not put into the game, and most of the perks many perks that you see in other games are usually just flat improvements of certain characteristics, and we tried to have all the perks be somewhat interesting to change a mechanic or have like a percentual change or change the way a character plays, for example, with the rotation. Then it opens up different tactics and strategies, or the lone wolf or whatever, and not just being like a flat stat increase. So we over the years we weeded out like most of the really boring perks, which are very common in many games. But yeah, we feel that the perks we have in the game right now is a highly, I would just say, distilled version of all the perks that we had over the years.
Mhm. We're just 15 minutes from finishing the whole thing. So, guys, if you have your questions ready, start sending them because we're running out of time. Uh, pa, 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 pa. Win asks, any chance for in some unspecified features, some content in regards to restoring Legion armor and arms? It doesn't have to match the highest tier stuff. I'm just a Rumabu and want to build my Legion.
Yeah, I've read that a couple of times. It's definitely known to us that it's a wanted feature.
Aaron, will you change your approach to the tutorial for Menace?
Yes, that's one of the biggest problems of Battle Royale, that there's literally no tutorial, and it's there are some reasons why a lot of people basically bounce on Battle Brothers, or they go through Steam and skip it, and I think it's costing us a lot in conversions. And there are probably out there loads of people who would enjoy the game, but because of I don't know, the presentation and the lack of a proper tutorial and uh, the extremely steep learning curve and so on, it's we're losing a lot of people who would love the game. And for Menace, we definitely took our lessons there, and will do things a lot better. So you have like a proper tutorial, you have like
Mhm.
game mechanics that get introduced over time and so on.
Konsue asks, is there any idea or concept to add an... you have already discussed that. We have already discussed that. Adding Eastern nations, units, armor, etc., comparable to Japan or China. That was mentioned earlier in the chat. The bottom line is it would be cool, right?
Yes.
But not if the would be cool. Okay, checking Steam again. Sorry, I'm really apologies for the people who are sending questions on the Steam chat. I am reading, but it's difficult to keep track of everything going on at the same time. Uh, Jerry Ward says, if you ever get the chance to do a Battle Brothers style game in the Warhammer Fantasy world, it would be awesome. But the old Warhammer Fantasy world, the old world, not the Age of Sigmar nonsense. That's me talking.
What's Age
Real
of
scenes.
Sigmar?
Dirk Diggler says, is there one aspect of Battle Brothers that you put a lot of effort behind it in terms of development time that did not resonate with the players?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I at first, if I like didn't listen to the last part, I would say like noble houses, but we never actually implemented it, which didn't resonate well with the players. Well, the Alps, I think we reworked them like 4 times drastically, and they people hated them. So I think with the Alps we had we put like a really big challenge on ourselves, and I think now they are playable, but they're still not as like as fun or interesting as we wanted them to be. And for some reason, we never got to the right point where people actually thought they were a cool enemy or fun to fight. I think that's the one that comes into my mind quickly.
Mm-hmm. Still says, like fighting for 400 hours versus 7 Alps, chasing them all over the place.
Exactly. At some point, they would spawn like shadows that attack you, and yeah, they have like so many different iterations.
Mm. Physics Cat mentions the modern modding scene of the old XCOM. There's a fantasy mod called X Chronicles that it's pretty interesting. I didn't know about that.
I don't know. I played a little bit of Open XCOM. I think that's basically like an updated version of the original XCOM. But I wasn't aware of the fantasy mode. I have to check it out. What was the name again?
Chronicles
Okay, yeah,
with
I
a
will check it.
semicolon between X and Chronicles.
I'll check that out. Sounds interesting.
Checking if there are more questions that I have left behind. Well, someone asks, Riorsings asks if there are weather effects in Battle Brothers and do they affect gameplay? They don't. There are rain and snow in battle, but that's as far as I can tell. There's no hidden effect behind them, right?
Exactly. It's only the I don't know how to want to say, like the floor tiles if they have snow on them or water or whatever, but not
Mhm.
the extra weather.
Wow, that hyena took a lot. to die. That one guy, would it be possible to get another look at the bleed bandage aspect or the poison antidote? Example, use at 9 AP to staunch the buff, but not as effective as using a bandage or being able to bandage yourself when out of combat when next to someone with a bandage. It felt extremely situational currently.
Yeah, I agree on that. It's the many of the consumables are really situational, and it's
Mhm.
definitely I'm aware of that as well. Yeah.
LSD, kind of off topic. As a Hamburger myself, what part of Hamburg are you guys from?
Yeah. So we live in Eimsbüttel, and our office is in the Schanzenviertel. So that's where we are hanging around.
Mhm. Beef Deluxe. What's your opinion on permanent bases slash base building? We have already gone over this, I reckon, but well, I guess in general, do you like games where you get to build your base?
Yeah, I do definitely. But there's some games where the base building doesn't include any choices, and I think at that point it's a bit tedious because if every player of the game ends up with the 100% exact same base, like where's the choice? So I think if you have base building in the game, I want it to be meaningful and to be an expression of my play style and my character, and have my own prioritizations and have bases that I don't know are different from other players and not just go through the same linear upgrade tree. That's just my opinion. Yeah.
Sometimes the problem is not that there are super linear, but that there are like a beeline way to do things in an optimal way. In XCOM, at the end of the day, you might be limited by your resources, but there is an optimal way to do things that you
Yeah.
realize at some point. So I guess the more difficult thing is not to make it non-linear, but doing it, um, but but creating several optimal paths for it to go. I guess
Exactly. Yeah,
that's.
but in general, I don't like things where there is an optimal way where you just have to go online and read one guide and then you know how to play the game. That's something that I think that the one of the big advantages of computer games is that you have the ability to allow for different solutions for a problem. And for me, that's what makes a computer game, and like contrary
Mhm,
to a book or a movie or something.
mhm. I don't know how to read your name. Rahim. Well, what do you think about the ranged defense stat? Players no longer putting any points into it because the AI won't target high ranged death brothers.
Yeah, so still, I think if you have like a character that you really don't want to get sniped, it's still good if you get like a high range defense, and so you can make sure that this character is not getting hit. I think then it's still worth putting points into it. So I personally do it, but I can totally see different builds or different ways to play the game where it doesn't make sense to level certain stats. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I is maybe a little bit too intelligent sometimes.
Ichiopastic. I would like that Battle Brothers would develop from just one city per faction and having more than one city per factions in the north, I guess, because in the south they are literally city states. But
Yes.
I don't know if at this point that's too much in the core of the game, right?
Um, Yeah, the thing is that we felt it was a little bit weird for cities to change the size. I think that's what this question is aimed about.
Hmm.
That you because it doesn't take place over like multiple years, and it would take years for a city to grow. So we always felt that that would be a little bit out of scope for the game for cities to be founded and grow and become a castle or something.
Hmm. Very odd question, but Beef Deluxe on Steam says favorite foods to eat while developing.
Yeah, one of my personal favorites is it's a ramen place. It's called Momo's Ramen. It's in the Schanze. It's really really good. You have to go there.
Mhm. This is a suggestion from Feeding Friendly. Can we have even more caravan upgrades as a gold sink? partly because there are so many events that dilute the event pool, preventing me from finding good events like upgrading card, lindworm slayers, and some that cool stuff.
Yeah, I noted that more space in the inventory.
Mm-hmm. Hey, guys, we've got 5 minutes to finish this whole thing, so I guess we've got some time for one or maybe two more questions before a final parting words from Jan. So shoot, because we're almost over. Now they're all frantically writing. That one guy, any potential for future map generation tools? Even if it was a paid DLC, I'd go for it. Example where you
Uh,
can choose if there's a salt mine, number of settlements, number of ports, that kind of thing.
we never get around to doing that. For some reason, it always was further down than other features on our to-do list. But yeah, it's definitely still on there, and I think people would like to have it.
Meads, did you ever consider making named mercenaries with their own personality and interactions, like in Jagged Alliance 1 and 2? Are characters unique or randomized in Menace?
That's a really funny thing. Yeah, we thought about it would be cool to have not single mercenary characters, but mercenary companies that they are traveling on the world in Battle Bros. But it could be like a whole DLC to flesh out their world and to have them actually fulfill contracts and maybe having like a mercenary leaderboard on the world where you compete against other mercenary companies. So there's like really a lot of. I could also see a lot of really cool mercenary outfits coming with that. So that's totally up there. We thought about having unique hand-drawn characters in the game that you could randomly meet, but at some point we decided against it. And yeah, with Menace, I can't tell yet. Sorry.
All right, checking Steam again. Yeah, one says we need to go to Hamburg now. I guess the ramen description sounded very appetizing.
Yeah, it's a really good
There are
one.
a couple of questions about player versus player, player versus player, multiplayer support in the new game. I know you cannot talk about that yet, but just so you know, people would like to slap each other in the face in your next games.
Yeah, we
Now,
are. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
no, just saying that we've got time for one more question and then
Yeah.
we've got to say goodbye. So, whoever's faster gets the cake. Horses win. We already know that. Mint is
More.
writing.
uh, awesome.
I'm fleeing again from the same band of nachos because there's a level 3 one sneakily hidden between them.
You're still there. Sometimes you get like.
Minty, a good question for a last question. When should we be looking or waiting for more news on the new game?
It's what we are aiming for right now is to have a big proper announcement in the early summer, so right in time for a little bit ahead of Gamescom, or alternatively at Gamescom. But if things go somewhat sideways, then we will have to postpone it a little bit, which might happen, but hopefully not. But our plan is like, yeah, within the summer you will get like the full announcement and a lot more details on the new game, and yeah, which I'm really looking forward to.
Hey, we don't have time for more. Thanks a lot to everyone who attended the event and have been sending their questions. Thanks, Jan, for your time and for taking part of this chat with the devs event. Sorry for slaughtering the Manhunter's origin. As I said, it's not my strongest one, and it's very difficult, much more difficult than I anticipated, to keep an eye on 3 different chats and play a tactical game such as Battle Brothers at the same time. But before we say goodbye, any parting words, Jan? Anything that you want to say that you think was left? Well, that you wanted to say but didn't say yet?
Yeah, I'm really happy how many people turned up for this, and also we tried this time the new format where we do like an actual voice thing and you stream the game. And I think it's a really cool thing, and we should do it again soon. And yeah, thanks for all the questions and the engagement. It was really cool to see all the people enjoying the game. And also, if you want to try something with Battle Bros and help us out, then drop me a line at contact@overhypestudios.com so I can get in touch with you about it. And yeah, I'm hoping to see you soon again. And yeah, thanks.
Thanks a lot to everyone who attended. Thanks, Jan. Talk to you very soon. Bye bye. Have a nice weekend.
Bye, guys. Bye.